This podcast is co-created and co-produced by Food Allergy Institute and the 12 Company. Listeners should know that the podcast host, Lesley-Anne Stone, is not a physician nor a licensed medical professional, and the purpose of this podcast is strictly limited to storytelling. Any content shared within the podcast is not intended to be medical advice and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment purposes. All listeners are urged to consult their healthcare providers. The creators, hosts, and guests of this podcast are not liable for any decisions or actions taken by any persons who claim to rely upon the content of this podcast.
But I learned early on, you really have to be an advocate for your child. You have to educate everybody around you, everybody that's going to be in his orbit.
That's why I call you the Pioneer Mom. Hi, I'm Lesley-Anne Stone, and this is Resilience and Hope, a food allergy podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, someone who is very, very, very special to me. Her name is Cheri O'Neill. Cheri O'Neill was the first food allergy mom I spoke with after Sam's diagnosis. Cheri has a son named Justin, and Justin and I are longtime colleagues and friends. And Justin was the first person I ever met to have food allergy. He is allergic to peanuts. And we worked together in an office over a decade ago now. And we were very conscious of the office having a nut-free environment for him. His safety was extremely important to all of us in the office. But when Sam was diagnosed with food allergy, I contacted Justin because he was the only person I knew with food allergy, and I wanted his advice on what we should do. And he said, you know what? You should talk to my mom. She's the one you should speak to. And I thought, that's actually really intelligent. Well, I do want to hear from you. I should speak to his mom, the one who raised him. Justin is so wonderful and successful and well-adjusted that speaking to Cheri, his mother, just made perfect sense. And somebody who raised a child in the 80s and 90s when food allergy wasn't so prevalent is rather fascinating to me. So here she is, my friend, Cheri O'Neill. Thank you for being with us today, Cheri.
Good to see you again.
I'm sitting in Long Beach, California at the Food Allergy Institute, and Cheri is up in Northern California. Cheri, I would love for you to share with us what it was like for you in the 80s and 90s to have a child who was allergic to peanuts. So if you don't mind briefly just telling us your story with Justin, his diagnosis, and what it was like having a young child with food allergy.
Well, thank you. Great to see you. Great to be here. Our story started June of 1986. Justin had just turned 2, and I was pregnant with my daughter. I was 7 months pregnant, and we had dropped him off at my in-laws' house while we went and did some shopping. And thankfully that day we showed up early back home. And when we arrived home, Justin was wheezing, coughing up mucus. He had a rash and just trouble breathing. And immediately, we both said, what did he eat? And my mother-in-law said a quarter of a peanut butter sandwich. And the funny part about this is, we had taken a CPR class before he was born. And, they had told us, be careful of peanut butter with children because if you don't serve it to them on bread or cracker, it could get lodged in their throat and they could, die, suffocate, choke. And so we never gave it to him only for that reason, not because we thought he would be allergic. It didn't even occur to me. So we rushed him down to the hospital, and we got to the hospital. They took one look at him and they just took him from us over the counter and brought him to the back. And so we went back. They gave him all the injections that they need to give him, the epinephrine, et cetera. And we stayed there for a few hours because there could be a secondary reaction to the first one. And so we were just in shock by this whole thing, and overwhelmed. And so then while we were there, they go, you need to get a bee sting kit.
A bee sting kit. A bee sting kit.
So, because it has the epinephrine, hypodermic needle. And I'm like, not a big fan of needles. And so I had to learn to possibly inject my son with this needle, that would have life-saving things in it. So I had to practice on an orange. And so they had me do that in the hospital. And thankfully, I never had to use it. But we got that. And then they recommended we go see our pediatrician, which we did the next day, made an appointment with them. And he then recommended we see an allergist immediately. And so we got in to see an allergist, and they did food testing, the allergen test on him on his back, and peanuts, one of them. And then they had several other items on there. And immediately, of course, the peanut just flared up, but others also flared up. And I go, well, what are these? And he goes, well, green bean and peas. And I go, well, that can't be right. I gave him those when he was, when you're just giving food to the babies, and, you give it to him 2-3 days, no reaction. I go, that's not possible. He goes, well, once they have a reaction to this particular thing, which is the peanut, you can now have a reaction to other legumes. Again, I'm learning. I didn't realize peanut was a legume. I thought it was considered a nut, but we were learning things all the way around here. They also recommended that we get him a medical alert bracelet, which we did. And that states, everything he's allergic to, in case in the event he's unconscious and paramedics show up, they know what happened, what possibly is his allergies. So then from there, we needed to educate our family, our friends, schools, and, about reading labels, and which I don't think I really ever did, and back then labels weren't as good as they are today. For instance, we had a situation with M&Ms, plain M&Ms, and we looked at it and there was peanuts on the label. And I go, well, this is plain M&Ms. So we called the company, and the company said, well, we crush our peanuts and put them in the shell of the candy shell of the M&M. I'm like, oh my, again, hidden things that you wouldn't think about. Now today, things are labeled much better. However, you have different problems today with nut flours, for instance, that people don't associate being a nut or an allergen for a child, whatever the allergen might be. So again, reading labels, the cross-contamination, these are all things we had to, the allergist alerted us that we need to watch for. He also recommended, and I don't know if this publication is still today, but it was called the Food Allergy Network newsletter. There was no internet back then, so things had to be mailed and, this type of thing. So we signed up for that. We would get these newsletters, I don't know, probably came once a month or every few weeks. And it would have suggestions of recipes. And it wouldn't just be peanut allergies, it would be all allergens. We would see recommendations for situations, going to a birthday party, different things like that. Then came time, we had my daughter, and I'm like, what about her? Can we test her to see if she's allergic to peanuts? And they're like, well, it could be a false positive or a false negative. You need to give her the peanut. Well, this kind of set me off because I'm like, oh boy. So we did during a non-busy time. We could get to the hospital if we needed to. She loves peanuts. She's fine. So
that's very similar to my situation with Casey. My younger son doesn't have any allergies. And when I gave him, we were advised at 6 months to give him peanut butter. And I had Dave take Sam out of the house, and I wore like a hazmat suit, and I'm giving the baby peanut butter with an EpiPen and Benadryl and just preparing to go to the hospital. And he's fine. It's wild.
It is wild. It's very strange. And I knew nobody that had any type of allergies. So we were kind of on our own. So the other thing we needed to do with Justin is drill into his head that wherever he goes, and he learned this early on, ask, is there peanut butter, peanut oil, peanuts, or any legumes in this item? And he always asked. Preschool, we go to preschool. We've now, told the director, the teachers, again, all alerted of his allergies. And so, Justin, of course, the drill, he asked the question, it's Valentine's Day. Does this have peanuts, peanut butter, peanut oil, legumes? But he asked the 4.5-year-old. And the 4.5-year-old child, of course, said, no, it doesn't have any in it. Well, guess what? It did. And so the director called me. And at that time, again, still no cell phones. I'm on the phone. They cut into the call. And I took the call and they go, well, he's had a reaction. I go, call 911. I'll get over there as fast as I can. I called my husband and I said, call the school and you stay on the phone with them till I get over there. And they did. So he stayed in contact because then I lost contact once I left the house.
I can't imagine, Cheri. I cannot, just hearing you. And I've heard this story before from you and Justin. And I just feel
right. Well, of course I hit every stop sign. I hit the train. I mean, it was like I hit every obstacle I could. I couldn't get there fast enough, or it seemed like it took forever. Probably it didn't, but I get there and brave little Justin had the oxygen mask on. The paramedics were around him and they were, tending to him, but then they needed to take him to the hospital. So I went with them in the ambulance and the director took little Kristen, my daughter, in her car to the hospital. And we had to, again, spend a few hours there to, get the medication and make sure there wasn't a secondary. But now I have no car. So I had to wait for somebody to pick me up at the hospital with the two kids. But I learned early on, you really have to be an advocate for your child. You have to educate everybody around you, everybody that's going to be in his orbit, about this. And nobody knew. The schools never saw anything like this. And I would see the director of the preschool from time to time, and she'd always bring it up to me how, oh, Justin, he's the one that had the peanut allergy. And I said, yes, so, but it forced them to also know what to do. So they knew what to do in a situation if it happened again.
That's why I call you the pioneer mom. You are the pioneer mom. And you said to me when I called you, and it really resonated with me. You said you are your biggest advocate for your child. And I knew that. You know that as a parent, of course you are. But when you hear it in the context of being a food allergy parent, it just really struck a chord with me. And I love that word advocate. And it's true. If you don't mind, if you can share with us what it was like for you. You were always a room parent. I remember Justin saying to me, he loved that mom was always around. I get that as a kid, you love that. But for you, there was a different layer to that.
There was. Yeah. So when we hit grade school. And so I, of course, every opportunity I could, I asked to be a room mom. Of course, there's many other moms and everybody wants to be a room mom. So I only could do it so many times. But what I did ask is and even if I was a room mom, can I bring the snacks? Can I bring the food? I never, ever wanted him to feel excluded or different than the other kids. And I often brought all the food for everybody, the snacks, the whatever it was, because again, I didn't want him to feel excluded. Also, I stayed at every single birthday party that he ever went to. And again, parents loved it because it was an extra set of hands, because most parents drop their kids off in 2 free hours of time. But I was like, I never again wanted him to feel like, he was not going to be safe. I also helped look out for him. And also the parents, in a way, appreciated it because then they didn't have to worry. I would just be asking the questions. What does this have in it? And then I would alert Justin, do not eat this. And early on, and he still is this way to today, is he knows if, he's not sure, he doesn't eat it. So, he'll go to parties. after he's eaten because he doesn't want to feel hungry at a party. He just will eat ahead of time and then he doesn't worry about it. But there was an instance in kindergarten where I showed up early one day, and to my horror, they had made bird feeders, and the bird feeders were made out of pine cones wrapped around with peanut butter on the outside. And
oh my gosh.
So luckily Justin knew to stay away from it, and he did. So all was fine. But then, as I mentioned earlier, he had the medical alert bracelet. And as he started to get older, I think I heard this later on from him, that the kids, I think, were making fun of him. And he goes, "Can I wear something else?" And I said, yes. So we got him a necklace, which was hidden under his shirt, but it was still there in case of something happening. It would alert the paramedics or whoever was helping him that it was there. And then, of course, as time went on, there's the EpiPen, and which is like kind of a pen size, I guess. And he had that for many years. And then now, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, I wrote it down because it's called an
AVQ. AVQ.
Auto injection, and it talks to you, and it's very small.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he puts that in his pocket. So that they're coming out with new things all the time. But then, of course, things went along pretty good. And then college, we hit college.
Yes. I cannot imagine sending a food allergy child off to college. And yes, you had a bit of a nightmare situation, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah. So he goes off to college, and of course it wasn't local. It was, Southern California. So the first week of school, and again, going back to, he was aware at early age, tell the people that you're around about your allergies. So his roommate knew, his RA, everybody around him knew of his allergy. And, he always with people that knew. So the first week of school, we get a call at 2 a.m. Now, as we all know, there's no good calls at 2 a.m. And it was the roommate. And of course, even more horrifying because what's going on? And he goes,
oh my gosh.
So at, I guess earlier, kind of late in the evening, he had gotten a beverage at one of the local campus coffee shops, like a Starbucks. And it was probably something like a Frappuccino or something. And he'd always gotten it, never had a problem. Well, this particular time he had a reaction. And so he immediately told his roommate, who then got the RA, who got security, and who drove him to the emergency. And that's where they called us from. But what I didn't realize was, I go, well, can I talk to the doctor? Well, they would not talk to me because Justin's 18 and Justin's now an adult. So they don't talk.
That is so scary that you cannot be in touch with him.
Yeah.
Boy.
So the roommate again was there. He was our eyes and ears and kept reporting back to us. All was fine. And, but it was an eye opener again. You worry about these things happening. But then they do. And so it's like, but we prepared him, and he was prepared, and he's always been a responsible kid, young man. And, I just am thankful that, he's that way, and he surrounds himself with good people.
You've been through it, Cheri. I mean, these stories are very scary, and you've been through it. And my question for you is, now knowing Sam's journey with the Food Allergy Institute, and that he's now in remission and he lives in food freedom, what is your opinion on this now, seeing how prevalent food allergy is in among children, and now that there is the opportunity to participate in a program that could lead you into remission? What are your thoughts of that? Looking back 40 years ago, you were such a pioneer. There was, like you said, your preschool director still remembers that you were the only one. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm blown away. And I have a feeling, I had a really good pediatrician, and I'm going to bet he would have known about this program, because he was always very on top of cutting edge things. Like he would always, like if he suspected something with the kids, he'd have us go check with a specialist, and probably more so than the average, but I didn't care. I'm like, that's great. So my feeling is my doctor somehow would have found out about this, and which is what you're doing, getting the word out by what you're doing and talking to the parents, and you know, you'll see a parent or hear a parent that has an allergy and you bring it up, you know, what your experience is. Not everybody is, you know, shall I say, accepting of it, but you know, it's good to put the word out. I do too. And I think by letting people know, you save a life, because I've told many of my friends and they tell their kids and, you know, they know what to look for in an allergy situation and anaphylaxis. And I've had many of them come back to me and said, I gave my granddaughter, you know, peanuts and she's okay. And I'm like, that's great. But I think it's wonderful. I think it's hopeful. I think there's so much hope where there wasn't that. I would see articles in the paper that they were working on things. I never really knew what they were, was things that would help kids. Maybe if they happened to have it, they wouldn't go into full blown, but they'd still have to get to the hospital. But nothing like this, what you're talking about in remission, which is awesome. And he's actually eating the allergens that were causing the problem.
Fully. Yep. He is. And it's true. There is a lot of hope, because when I first talked to you over a decade ago, there was nothing. And I felt so helpless and hopeless, but your words of encouragement and your story with Justin as I said earlier, set the stage for me, really gave me perspective, but also you made me feel empowered that, okay, I'm going to be in the classroom a lot. Okay, I'm going to be an advocate for my child. I am going to educate people about food allergy. And now that we are with the Food Allergy Institute, I'm continuing to be an advocate. And it's very much because of you, Cheri. And I'm so grateful to that. You know, you are very much a pioneer, but a mentor. And I use so many things, like going back to the medic bracelet, something I hadn't even thought about. And what if I was in a car accident and I was knocked out? The first thing the paramedic is going to do is give the kid a snack, a lollipop, a piece of cookie.
And just today, he has some kind of bracelet on, and it's not a medic alert, but it's like it's a little black band, and on it has what his allergy is, and he wears it especially when he's traveling. But you don't even notice it really, but the right people will know what it is, and the people that get paramedics. But no, what you're doing and the doctors you're working with are fabulous. And I wish they had this, and I hope they work on developing for older adults, you know, that like Justin's age, you know, where it might help him. Because there's anxiety with him, you know, when he travels, or, you know, he goes everywhere.
I have a question for you. One last question for you, Cheri. What is your message to newly diagnosed parents with newly diagnosed kids? What is your message to them?
Well, I mean, there's things to go to now. Where I had the newsletter, I mean, you've actually internet, you've got your program that you're working with the doctors, and you're getting your word out there. People listen to these podcasts and listen to what parents have gone through and what you are out the other side on a positive note. And, you know, people want to hear this, and there's hope. And that's the big word here, is hope, because there wasn't anything. As I said, I kept reading articles that kept saying they were working on stuff, but nothing was quite there, or it wasn't for Justin's age. And I think they're giving the peanut to the kids at a younger age too. As you said, your other child was
6 months. They advised us at 6 months to give it to Casey, and then to continue to give it. So that's a story in itself too, because Sam would go to preschool. So he was out of the house. And then I had this 6-month-old baby, and I would strip him down. I would put him into the shower stall, give him peanut butter, and then hose him down, rinse out his mouth, and then put him down for a nap.
Yeah.
But of course, one day, and then we would have to do that a couple times a week.
Right.
And then I had the peanut butter in a bag within a bag, a Ziploc bag. And so I was on the top of the hallway closet where I knew nobody could get to it. But one time, I gave Casey the peanut butter in the shower stall, hose him down, rinse out his mouth, change him, getting ready. I'm rocking him, and like babies do, he just threw up all over me. And, oh my gosh, I had to clean up everything and make sure there's no cross-contaminated residue.
No, now you got to hose yourself down.
We're all fine. I live to tell the story.
But yeah, as I said, the only reason I had never given it to him was because of the choking hazard. That was it. It wasn't because I was afraid of an allergy. No idea. But I didn't think about it until today too, that you didn't have the internet and how much Googling, and I'm on the social media groups and researching and seeing things that you didn't have that 24/7 tool. And is that better or worse? I don't know. I mean, because sometimes too much causes more anxiety, but there's more information you're finding too. So it goes both ways, and
connecting with people too. But it's just a different way to look at being a food allergy parent with no internet. And not having peers who are going through this as well. It's something. It's something. I really commend you, Cheri, and Justin being a colleague and a friend he's awesome. I mean, you're his mom. It's all because of you. And he's a terrific person who's taught me so much. And I think you're awesome. And thank you for being that first phone call, that first person I spoke with. Thank you.
Thank you. And I commend you too, because you've gone the extra mile and got into these programs and researched this doctor and, the program. And you've done it, and you kept going, and good for you. I mean, I thumbs up.
Thank you, Cheri. Thumbs up right back at you. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was so great. I think you're doing a wonderful job, and I will certainly share this with all of my friends and people, because it does go, people pass it on, and that's how you get the word out. Keep passing it on. You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in to Resilience and Hope, a Food Allergy Podcast. And please, we have social media. We have an email address. Write to us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to know your feedback on this episode. If you have any questions or comments, things you want to hear about in the future, write to us, resilienceandhopepodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time. I'm Lesley-Anne Stone. Thank you for tuning in. Resilience and Hope Podcast, made possible thanks to the support of Food Allergy Institute.